Let me finish this maternity leave. It has challenged me. I am a retired educator. You all already know this. And so I had to stretch for 9 weeks in 2 environmental classes and 1 forensic science class. So it has been a lot of fun. Needless to say, these high school students have really challenged me, and I've had fun challenging them. So, with that being said, just know that once the new people, whenever I finish getting this information uploaded, now you all will have access to all of the classes that we've offered so far. Once I send you all the email, I will send you all the instructions. That's why I asked for your email. Okay, so you'll be able to just go through and I'll send instructions. You'll be able to see all of the classes that we've done this year. You'll be able to have access to all the handouts that we've done. So that's one of the reasons why we always ask for your email so we can see that information. So, without any further ado, I want to bring my friend to the stage, Mr. Chad Van Orman, and at the end we will do an evaluation, which is also via QR code. Okay? And I'm going to I'm bringing the expert. The expert.
I'm glad I get an applause today because tomorrow we're not getting applause. So
Oh no!
I'm the judge for the city and I have trials tomorrow, so I tend to not get applause when I walk in the courtroom. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chad Van Orman. I am an attorney in town. I've been the judge for the city of Tipton now for about 10 years. Just a little bit about myself. So I graduated law school in 2008. I am married. I have 3 lovely children. I have twin daughters that are 10. I will tell you I had hair before they were born. I have brothers. I don't have sisters, so raising girls is an entirely new thing for me. So what I do in my law practice, I do a lot of corporate law. I do a lot of real estate, a ton of real estate, day in, day out. I do a lot of estate work. Okay, I could sit here and put some slides up for you to let you kind of just see on just some PowerPoint side of what estate work is. But for me, I feel that the best way for you all to understand it is simply give you examples of it. Okay? How many people think that in the state of Georgia, that if you have a spouse and if you have kids, everything goes to your wife when you die, or your spouse when you die? A lot of people actually have that misconception, okay? But under the intestacy laws of the state of Georgia, let's say you're married and your house is just in your name, and then now you die and you leave 2 children behind and you have a spouse, okay? If you do not have a will in the state of Georgia, what will happen is your spouse will get a third and each one of your kids will get a third, which is not what a lot of people want to happen, okay? To make that a little bit more interesting is you have 3 kids from a previous marriage. You marry somebody that has 3 kids from a previous marriage. And if you don't do a will, and let's say that person actually owns the house, and that person dies, okay? So again, there's no will. I've had this happen where the wife comes in and she is expecting to get all the property. She is now fighting the property with not only her 3 kids, but also 3 kids that are not hers. And I can assure you that does not go well. Okay? I can't tell you over and over and over again how important it is to have a last will and testament. Yes, sir?
What about the married? She has kids that I know.
Okay. Then you have to consider what will happen in that situation if you don't have kids, everything will go to her. Okay? There's so many variables that come into play. And that's why it is so important, because what you think of the last will and testament as, that is where I'm going to tell the world what I want to happen to my stuff. Okay? The other situation, which I really hate to deal with, is when somebody passes away and they want all their stuff to go to their 3 kids, or their 2 kids, or their 4 kids, or their 5 kids. I can tell you day in and day out, I would love to tell you that all your kids are going to get along when you're not here. But I'm going to tell you for the most part that they don't. Because there's going to be one of those kids that is going to want money more than the others. An example, usually, this is my favorite, is that you have a child living with you, okay? Just you, you're widowed, or you're not married, and you have 3 kids. One of those children is living in the house with you, right? So you then say, I'm going to leave that property to my 3 kids. It sounds like it would be a fair divide. My favorite part is when they make the executor the child that's living in the house. Okay? As you can imagine, what typically happens is the child that's living in the house isn't going to probate the will. Why is that? Because it's going to force them to have to do something. And in that situation, they don't want to do something. And then now you have 2 kids on the outside looking in, and they can't get anything done because the child who has the authority, who's supposed to have the authority, isn't doing anything. I actually have 2 adult children with this exact problem right now. And I love that people love their kids, and I want you to love your kids. But I need you to understand that your kids are not going to make those same decisions if you're not here. Because it's typically mom, or it's grandma, or it's dad, or grandpa. And if you don't come up with an answer, it's just going to go to them. And what will typically happen is it will create animosity in the family. I've had it, I've seen it umpteen times. I had one where I was doing an estate, and I even said, before some of the children came in to sign the documents, and I said, hey, we're about to probate the will, and I said, are we going to have any issues? Are we going to have any issues in this situation? No, sir? None at all? I'm telling you what, it was like the Holy Spirit said to me when that one child walked in the room and he said, there's your problem. And I'm telling you, nobody flinched, nobody moved until that child walked over to mama, leaned down, kisses mama on the cheek, says, I love you, mama. Mama didn't flinch. And I knew right then, I'm like, there's my problem. And I'm still dealing with that problem now about a year and a half later. Okay? So I can't urge you enough to explain to you that the estate, having a will done is so important. Okay? It is just so important. And then the other one. If you don't deal with it now, okay? I deal with this a lot too. Where grandpa died, or great-grandpa died. Nobody's probating the will. Nobody's doing anything with the estate. Everybody knows what a tree is, right? And then when you go down in the ground, what do you have? You have roots. And roots get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just like your family tree. The longer you wait, the more roots you're going to have. I had to deal with one a few years ago. It was 72 people to try to deal with an estate because that estate was never resolved, even back in, I think it was the 30s or 40s. But nobody ever wanted to deal. Okay? So I would urge you to really consider how you're going to handle your estate. Now, a lot of people get afraid and they're like, well, the estate's going to take money. It's going to take my stuff. Right? Under the laws of the state of Georgia, under the intestacy laws, obviously the first thing we're going to look at is the spouse. Okay? If there is a spouse, then the spouse will take it. If there are no children, then the spouse will take 100%. If there is a spouse and there is one child, then the child and the spouse will be split 50-50. Okay? If there is a spouse and 2 children, it will be a third, third, third. If there is a spouse or any more children than that, the spouse will not take less than 1/3. Okay? And the children will then just inherit and they'll divide out that share. Okay? Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. That same scenario, this happened about this past April 23rd, and he has 2 properties. So I thought automatically it went to his wife, but being that you said that, me and my sister would have a third. Is that correct?
If there's no will.
There is no will.
Yep, and that's a he had two siblings, and there was no will. And my dad felt that he should have the house because he was living in it the whole time, which is a joke to me, but whatever. But in that situation, again, just like you, what makes it any different because you were living in a house that was not your parents or your dad, right? So, and even if my dad were here today, I would tell him he was absolutely wrong because his siblings were entitled to 1/3. They didn't do anything less. They weren't any less than in their parents' eyes. And the same thing for you. You still are entitled to that 1/3. Somebody's going to try to make you believe otherwise. But again, if there's a will, that changes the entire situation. Okay? And I will tell you, in your last will and testament, you can give anything you want. You can give it to whoever you want. My mom's giving me her Bible. Okay? And you can give it to people that are not your kids. Your kids may not like it, and you may not leave your kids anything. But that's your decision. Right? I had a situation where I love this lady, she was such a good lady, but she would take her daughter out of the will about every 2 months. It just depended on how she treated her. But ultimately, in the end, actually, when Mom was probably in her late 80s, daughter assaulted Mom. And Mom finally took her out of the will. Well, it left daughter out in the wind. We're talking millions. And sadly, the daughter then comes back and she tries to contest the will. And what that means in the state of Georgia is that they're trying to show that, number one, you're either incompetent, which means you don't understand what you're doing, and you did not have the mental capacity to make a will. Okay? Or they can say that there was duress. What that means is somebody put you under the influence and made you do the will and made you make those changes. Okay? I can tell you, I love that look. This is seriously. That's like my daughter's look. I had my daughter Anna Claire there for a second. I was like, but like in that situation, they came to me and they were ready to take a deposition of me to tell me that she was not to make me come in and say, and finally relent and say that there was somebody in the room, or that she was not competent to make a will. Okay? The good thing about how I do it the same every single time. There's no one in that room. I just had it today. Somebody was trying to tell me something. I'm like, you can tell me all you want, but you're going out there. And you're not going to participate in how this will is executed. Because I see it. There are people that do try to influence somebody's decision. And yes, they'll try to come in, but they don't come in. And I had that deposition. I'm telling you, that attorney was ready to take my deposition all day. I could just feel it. It lasted for about 20 or 30 minutes. Because he said, how do you know somebody was not in that room? I said, well, there's no one ever in the room. Well, how do you know? Well, I'm like, I know because I don't do it. So did anybody bring them? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they did. But it doesn't matter because they weren't in the room. Right? So you can't make me change my story. That is my story and I'm sticking to it. And about 20 minutes into it, by the time he asked me that about 20 times, he finally said, well, I need a minute. And then 5 minutes later, he comes back and he said, thank you, I heard that. So, but just to understand, in the state of Georgia, look, I like to say this, you could walk into my office, you could be running down the street in a diaper and with a t-shirt on, and you could be acting crazy if you want. But if you come in and you have a mental capacity at that point in time, then we can do your will. But I'm telling you, I'll turn you down if you don't. I've had it, and I've actually had other attorneys. I've turned them down, and they've gone to another attorney, and that attorney did it, but I will not. I like to sleep at night, and I like to have the answer to the good Lord, and I like to keep my law license, because those are my values. Yes, ma'am.
In these circumstances, it was a good idea to cut a child or a spouse out of the will.
There. So you actually gave me one of my favorites. So this guy, I took his information, and I said, sir, how many children do you have? He said, 1. I woke up at like 2 in the morning, and the Holy Spirit saying, I don't like the way he said that. I don't like the way he said that. So I called him the next day. And men are my favorite, because I'm terrible at that. And I was like, okay, sir, did you help create another living being? I don't know how many ways you want me to say this, but do you have any more kids besides that one child that you and I talked about yesterday. Well, when you put it that way, I did have a one-night stand over in like California, and I was like, didn't it, baby? Yeah. I said, so you have 2 kids, right? I said, yeah. I said, well, why'd you say 1? And he said, well, I didn't want to leave them with anything. That is dangerous, because you know what? That kid can come forward and say it was not contemplated in the will, which means I want my share. So, yes, like I just had one yesterday. Because the kids don't call, because the kids don't come and see them, you name it. But my job is not to judge, because you may have reasons that I don't know, and I'm not going to do that to you. But we'll talk through it and understand and let them understand as to why, what's going on. You know, I guess that's the part of my job as the counselor side. Because I want to know, my job is simply to help you get to where you want to be and help you understand a lot of decisions that you're going to be making. It's a lot to come in and say, hey, I'm contemplating my death, and what do I do with my stuff when I die, right? Nobody really wants to come in and spend the money to do that. But if you don't, you don't get to dictate what happens to your stuff, right? And that's that's why it's so important to have that will, so you can make that decision as to exactly what you want to happen with your stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Follow up. So it sounded like when you were saying before I asked my question that if you do cut somebody out of the will and you do it appropriately by saying this is the name of the person that I am moving out, and then it sounds like that person could come back and contest the will.
They always can.
So would it be easier then to write everybody in equally? Is that, or is that, I know it's individual, but.
But is that what you want?
Well, I was just asking your opinion.
Yeah.
To make it smoother.
Let's just play our hypothetical out. Would that be what you want?
Yeah.
I'm only talking hypothetically. So, hypothetically speaking, if you don't want to leave them anything, why should you leave them something?
Well, hypothetically, I'd be dead, so
Yeah.
I want, my will,
Yeah, well, we have it to where there's called an interrogation provision that we can add into it, which means if you contest this will, you don't get it. Right? You can add that. But look, it's called, they like to call it the interrogation, meaning the terror. We're going to invoke the terror in you that if you contest this will, then we will say exactly what you get or what you don't get. But again, if you come in, you're confident, you know what you're doing, you know what you want, why should you have your kid dictate what you get, what you do? Because that's not right. Because look, we all know that probably some parents help one of their kids more than the other during their lifetime. And that doesn't get really brought into the will or talked about during the will, because that's the stuff that you did during their lifetime. And maybe that's why you don't give them something, because the other child, you didn't help them out during their lifetime because they were doing everything they should, right? So maybe that's why. And we would just simply put in there, look, I acknowledge that I have this child, child named so-and-so, but I understand and acknowledge that I'm not leaving anything, although I love it. Right?
Or it's another way to do it, going out and you sell it some $10.
Yeah. But they could still, then again, they're only out $10. I'm trying. Like the lady who saw her mom, she would have been out millions. And I'm telling you, oh, I got so mad when they settled, and mom, that the daughter got something that I knew the mom did not want her to have. I was mad. I was mad because I knew what she wanted. And it still makes me mad, because that's not what that poor lady wanted. And I hate that. That's the part that is frustrating in my line of business, but there's give and take as well in those situations. Now, let me say this. Now you have insurance policies. You have a life insurance policy. The one thing I want you all to make sure that you do is make sure that you have a beneficiary on there, right? Your bank account. That is another thing. Make sure you notate, you go to the bank and you put on there what's called a payable on death. Okay? That means if you tell the bank that if you pass away, here's who I want to have my money. Okay? The reason for that is that does not go in your will. So we're trying to take as much stuff out of your will and stuff that they can fight about outside the will, okay? So if it's outside the will, it means it doesn't go through probate, and if you pass away, all that person simply has to do is present your death certificate, and they get the money. It's easy, okay? Everybody good so far?
What about the car?
What-
It's one person's.
Hi. Hi. Chad Alexander, I mean, cars are always my hate
Can't
cars.
hear you.
What's that?
We cannot hear them.
The cars. So what they're saying is, what about the cars? So cars, like, so in the state of Georgia, let's say you and I own a car together, and it's in my name and your name. The state of Georgia does not do what is called joint right of survivorship. So that means if I die, she doesn't automatically get the car. That means my share is still stuck, and you've got to get my estate to get it out of my name, okay? So like in the car situation, yes. If it's easy, and let's say if there's just the spouse, you don't have to probate anything, to my understanding, there's an affidavit down at the tax commissioner's office that you can fill out that says, I am the rightful heir to this car, you go and fill it out and I'll transfer it over, okay? But, like I had one about a year ago, where the person signed that, we were in the middle of the estate being probated, so there was a lie, and so I had to call the person and say, look, you signed this document and you signed it under oath that you swore it was true. You just committed perjury. So I'm going to give you 24 hours to go undo your perjury. And if you don't, there's a potential that you can go to prison. So I'm going to give you a 24-hour head start and let you do what you want. That make it your decision. Of course, they went to the tax commissioner's office and they fixed it. But look, I mean, it is, just remember, it is your stuff. You need to probate it. I can't urge you enough to do estate work, especially when it comes to wills and trusts. Okay?
Excuse me.
Now, yes,
Did
ma'am.
you say with the car, joint, what?
So let's say if you,
Yeah.
is this your husband? So if you have a car, let's say you have a car, is it in both your names? Okay. Yeah. So if he passes away, then everything, you assume that car is just automatically going to go to you. It doesn't, because his share is still stuck there. Okay? If you go, in the state of Georgia, they don't recognize joint right of survivorship. It is your name and his name. So I'll give you, then I'll go ahead and tell you that. Okay. Yeah, now, the bank, so if the bank, if your checking account is in both of your names, yes, it automatically goes to the other, okay? And you just want to make sure everything is correct at the bank that says, when I pass away, it automatically goes, and it should already be set up that way.
Yeah, like for us with our car, we have to get one of these, and we have to get,
Yep,
and then we just kind of advise to do that, as we have an accident,
yep,
and then they let us see the person whose name is on the car,
yep,
instead of both of us.
yep.
That's
Yeah, but you have insurance to cover all that. And that's really, typically if they're going to sue you, they're only going to sue for policy money.
yeah.
That's all they want, for the most part, because they know to go after you individually is a lot more money and a lot more time, and for the attorney, it's not worth it. All right, so my one question was about how about my house and if I have a spouse. So in the state of Georgia, I think it started maybe about the late 80s, early 90s, they have what is called joint right of survivorship, okay? So let's say if you're married and you come into my office and you buy a house, and in that, what we're typically going to do is put it in you and your spouse's name, okay? We make it easy and we put it under joint right of survivorship. So the instant one of you passes away, instantly it becomes yours 100%. Right? Good with that? Good? Okay. Because if you don't, then what happens is your share doesn't automatically go to the spouse, it then goes down into your estate. And if you don't have a will, guess what? Remember those kids from the previous marriage? They come into play, and a lot of other problems come into play. So that's why it's changed a lot. So that's why we do the joint right of survivorship. We would certainly ask. I don't think in the past 10 years I've had anyone say I want it in joint as tenants in common, which means if you die, it goes down to your estate. Okay? Good? All right. So that's talking about when you pass away. One of the questions that a lot of people ask me too is, what about a trust? Okay? They have what is called and I'm going to give you the simple ones. I'm not going to go too in depth into this because it will take us down a rabbit hole that, and I will see a lot of confused looks on their faces. So, a lot of people ask, what about Medicaid? So you understand that Medicaid has a look-back period of what is called 5 years, right? So, if you want to get something out of your name, and you say, you come into me and you say, I want to give it to my kids. Well, if you give it to your kids, in 3 years, if you have a medical condition or that requires you to get on Medicaid for medicine that's very, very expensive every month, or you go into an assisted living facility which requires a lot of money and you have to get on Medicaid, they can do what is called a look back. So they can look back 5 years and determine if in fact you conveyed property or assets out of your name to prevent that from happening. They will come and get those assets and they'll use that to help pay for your care. Okay? So some people will want to come to me and they'll say, I want to put it into a trust. There is a trust that is called a irrevocable trust, okay? And there's one that is called an irrevocable, so it's IR revocable. The first one is the revocable trust. What that means is you are the trustee, you can move property in and out as often as you want, and you are the one that has control over it, right? The problem there is Medicaid sees that is that's still your stuff. Which means if you do that, it's still in your name. You haven't gotten it out of your name. So it is still your asset. So the other one, which is called the irrevocable trust, what that is it's created in such a way so you can't be the trustee. So that means you can't control the stuff. Somebody else has to be appointed to make decisions for that. They control it, not you. And the way what that does is it takes all the control, all the ownership out of your name. Yes, it can be done to where all the money is used for your benefit every day, but you don't have any say. And that type of trust does protect you, and so Medicaid can't get at that type of trust. All right? Now, let me step back up. So everything we've talked about thus far is if you pass away, right? But for me, it's so important to talk about a couple of documents that while you're alive. And a lot of people don't consider these documents. The first one is what is called the advance directive. The second one is what is called the financial power of attorney, right? So think of it as the healthcare directive oversees yourself, your body, your care. The financial power of attorney oversees your property, whether it's your dirt, your home, your money, your car, all of your stuff, right? I can give you example after example as to why this is so important. I had one a few, it's been about 7 years now. The husband was simply getting in the shower, and wife says, husband, put the rug down, right? You know men, we don't like to listen. He didn't listen though, and he got out of the shower and he slipped and he fell and he cracked his head on the toilet. Just like that. He was incompetent. He couldn't make any decisions from that point on. But what that meant was, at this point in time, they were retired, right? So all of their money for their daily living came from his investment account. So they needed now more money to oversee his care every month. So wife calls the investment company and they're like, we love you, we love seeing you, we love talking to you, but we can't help you. And what that meant then is we had to go to the court, which nowadays is about $5,000 for us to get this done. So we had to go to the court and do what's called a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. What that means is we're asking the court to appoint somebody over his stuff and his person, okay? We did get the wife appointed, but now what that meant was all of his assets got put into a special account. And when I mean special, it means the court, every year you have to make an accounting to the court. And you You have to tell them every year what happened to every penny, right? It goes so far that, let's say the house was just in the husband's name. If the air conditioner went out and it had to be replaced, she couldn't just write a check. She actually had to go and prepare a motion, file a motion with the court, have a hearing, asking the court for permission to simply take money out of that account to buy a new air conditioner. But what you have to understand too, during all of trying to deal with this, she was also trying to deal with the care for her husband. And the hardest thing for me is to see the spouse going downhill because it's so much on them. And it's a lot. I'm telling you, it is a lot. It hurt so bad to watch her go through that, and we couldn't do anything. It was so bad that when I got done with that, I did all my own. I have all the documents that I need, because I'm telling you what, I will not have my wife go through that. Because that was absolute torture. I'm telling you, she's trying to sit there and help go see him every day at the hospital, at the rehab facility. He ultimately passed away several months later, but trying to go and see him every day, trying to figure out how the courts work, what to do, everything that needs to be done. All that to say, all it would have taken was about $350 worth of documents. The financial power of attorney, again, that person makes the decisions for you regarding your property. They can buy, sell, lease real property, they can handle your personal property, they can talk to the IRS, they can talk to the Department of Revenue. My favorite is, you guys have Medicare, who's on Medicare? Anybody on Medicare? Okay. Spouse, have you called for Medicare for your spouse? Was your spouse called for you? Try it. Because what they're gonna say, what they're gonna tell you is, oh, hey, it's nice to talk to you, but really kind of need to talk to them for a minute. And all they're doing is getting that person on the phone to make sure number one, they're competent, make sure they're alive, and make sure that Medicare is authorized to talk to that first person. If you don't have it, look, you aren't getting anywhere. You are not getting anywhere. That's why this document is so important. I just can't urge you enough because I've seen it over and over and over again. Again, so that person can talk to Medicare, they can talk to Social Security, they can do whatever you want to allow them the authority to do. We can certainly limit it, but you can expand it, whatever you want to do. Okay? But I also tell you, you better trust the person that you're appointing as your agent. I say that because I had a situation a few years ago where daughter, and again, the parents had like 5 or 6 kids, but they appointed the one daughter as the agent. And daughter was just so kind that she felt that she was entitled, so she conveyed all the mom and dad's land to herself. And so when mom and dad finally passed away, all the other kids are like, hey, when are we going to split everything up? And sister's like, well, there's nothing to split up because I own it all. And of course, everybody's like, what? What are you talking about? Well, then we find the deed where she conveyed the property to herself. That is a no-no, right? And I'll tell you, even some of the authority is for you to communicate with the insurance company. You cannot change the beneficiary designation on any policy. The principal, who's the person that you are the one granting the power, you can change the beneficiary, but the person you appoint as your agent cannot. Because that is what is called a violation of your fiduciary duty, which means you can go to prison. And in that situation, I had to sue the lady, and I actually had to get all that property back. Thankfully, we were able to do that. But you can get times where somebody will actually, look, I've been a prosecutor in 2 different states. I've seen a lot of stuff that I really wish I could forget, but I can't. When it comes to estate work, it's neck and neck. When you hear about greed, I see it all the time, day in and day out. I know you love your kids. Love your kids. Love that you love your kids. But you know your kids. If you guys aren't there, what happens? That's what I can't stress it to you enough that you guys need to get that stuff done and get it figured out. Because if you don't, either nothing's gonna happen, or it's just gonna be. Man, I hate that when I see the. Really wish I didn't have to see the. I'd love to not have work to do. hate to see it, and that's just not what the Lord called us to do. So now back to let's go now to the advanced directive, okay? So the advanced directive is the document that you're going to use to make decisions with regards to your body. So I know you can get one at the hospital, but the one at the hospital is really skeleton thin. It's really narrow. It just simply says, if I die, don't resuscitate me, or don't do this, okay? That's great, but there's a lot of other stuff we need to talk about. So, for example, if you're in a car accident, and at that point in time you can't speak and you need blood, who makes that decision, right? And if you can't make the decision, can the person you appointed make the decision? What if they were in a car accident too? So I like to go thinking it through to where I like to put alternatives on my documents because I like to try to cover all my variables. So, but in that situation, you know, you want somebody that if you can't make those healthcare decisions, or you simply don't want to, you appoint this person to communicate with a doctor. They can also get your records for you. Now, what they cannot have done, they can't have psychosurgery done, they can't sterilize you, they can't throw you in the hospital for addictive disease, anything like that. So a lot of the men, they're happy. Can't get their wives can't sterilize. But look, you need to have these documents because it's that important. When you go through it, yes, there are situations that you get to a point to where you can simply say that if I am what is called, and just an easy way to say it, if you're in a permanent vegetative state, if you're a brain dead, right? So, example, our prosecutor, Bryce Johnson, November, he was simply walking in the living room, boom, boom, just like that. He was brain dead at that point. What do you want me to do? What would you want to happen at that point? If you're in a permanent vegetative state, and look, you've got your attending physician and a second physician in accordance with the then accepted medical standards. They're going to make that determination, right? And you're going to then select either A, you do anything and everything you can to keep me alive. 19-year-old you is probably going to say, yeah, I want you to do anything and everything you can to keep me alive. Because I'm 19, I want to live. But then you've got 90-year-old you or 80-year-old you, but either way, in that situation, if you're in a permanent vegetative state, the only thing that's keeping you living is life support. Or you're there. Does anybody remember Terry Shiva many years ago? That is actually, so Terry is what I actually wrote my law school paper. Terry lived in Florida. Terry, what happened to Terry was, I think she got into a car accident or something. I just can't remember, it's been many years ago. Terry did not have an advance directive, right? So Terry was an only child. Terry was in a permanent vegetative state. Terry's husband says, Terry doesn't want to live like this. She never would want to live like this. Mom and Dad said Terry wanted to live. They wanted everything and anything done to make sure their baby girl would live. And I get that. I mean, I have my own kids. They fought from the local courts all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. Getting the tube in, getting the tube out. Getting the tube in, getting the tube out. I mean, it went up and down, every fight, every which way possible. She ultimately died, I think right before the writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court of the United States. I think right when they denied it, she passed away like not long after that. But in that situation, wouldn't it have been just simply better to have something in place that just simply says, look, if I get in this situation, here's what I want you to do, right? I remember my aunt, I think it was like 5 or 6 years old. I'd have to go in and see this, I think she was my great aunt. All I remember is having to go into this nursing home, and all I remember sitting there looking at this lady going, the whole time. And I'm like, I think me, even at 5 or 6 years old, I'm like, who would want to live like that? She did. I think she probably lasted like 8 or 10 years. Like that. But those are the decisions you're gonna make. Those are the decisions you need to make, because if you don't, what ends up happening, if you don't make those decisions, then your kids are gonna make those decisions for you. I'm gonna tell you what, that's a tough thing to put on your kid. I don't want my daughters to do that. I mean, I don't want my son to do that. Bryce wouldn't want his kids to do that, or his wife. I mean, at that point in time, he was passed away, and they donated his organ. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have it. We do it. We put it in there, too, because what happens is in that point in time, we want to get in touch with, they want to get in touch with someone. Because what if everybody's, a lot of people don't answer their phones, or if you're in a spot where you don't have service, and something needs to be done quickly. I mean, usually I'll put a couple on in that situation, but the other situation is then you have a can't remember how it's worded, I don't have it in front of me, but you have a condition that says that you're going to die in a relatively short period of time, right? Those are the two options you get to pick, and then you go down and say, look, keep me alive, don't keep me alive, let my natural death occur, but give me pain medicine for comfort, just to be safe, or I like to call them the other option, which is called the apple cart method. The problem with this other option is what happened in about 2020, 2019. Come on, don't go, I got all the names. It's COVID. COVID, we all want to forget it. But once you started reading, like, look, with COVID, what was happening? They only had a certain number of hospital beds. And at one point they were starting to analyze their options. What are we doing? Who's coming in? Who's staying? Who's living? Who isn't? I don't care what you want to say, but I mean, I'm not saying that, but in that situation, a lot of people before that were making a decision, but a lot of people now are not. So they're leaving that option blank because they don't know what the facts are at the time. So we really don't know what the facts are. And they then let their agent make that decision for them based upon the facts at that time. So they will actually know what the facts are at that point in time. Okay? So now there's one other scenario. Okay? So while you've got this advance directive and this financial power of attorney, you can still make decisions for yourself, right? Now, dangers with that, though, if you get to a point to where you start becoming a danger to yourself, let's say with a financial power of attorney, had a lady that she was getting scammed. Wow, I felt so bad for her. She wired out like $100 grand a couple times. Boom, boom, boom. Families knowing that, but they couldn't stop it. Because here's the thing. You could walk into the bank with a diaper on and a t-shirt on and say, I want my money. Everyone else is looking at you like, she's crazy, or he's crazy. But the problem is the bank can't tell you no, because it's your money. And a court of law has not said that you're incompetent. So you can take your money or your stuff and do whatever you want with it, and it happens. In that situation, or you've got your advance directive, your health care, so your body, or you start making decisions, or lack of making decisions. Let's say you stop bathing, you stop taking your medicine, you stop meeting the needs of daily living, and you start becoming a danger to yourself. You're leaving the stove on, you're about to burn the house down. Old you would never do something like this, right? At that point in time, we have to then go to the court. That part, remember when I said about the $5,000 thing? We have got to protect you from yourself. And I will tell you, the court is very thorough when this happens. When we file a petition for guardianship conservatorship, they're going to appoint an attorney for you. They're going to appoint a guardian ad litem, so that person's kind of like an independent investigator for the court. They're going to make sure that your rights are protected. They're going to make sure that whatever is in the best interest of you happens. Okay? And it is going to be a thorough hearing. I've got one right now. I've got to have an examination done, multiple examinations by a physician to make sure if in fact they are they're incompetent, they can't take care of themselves, and there's a need. Because I'm going to tell you what, when you get people in that kind of situation, they're vulnerable. And you see people, maybe sitters, maybe family members, somebody's spending their money, And it's sad, but there are people out there that do it. So in that situation, you want to have that person protected. That's their stuff. It's not somebody else's stuff. It's not fair. It's not right. So we make sure that somebody who gets appointed, number one, they're going to go through that person who's a petitioner, who says, I'll be the one to oversee their care. They're going to look at that person. They're going to make sure that that person is okay. That person's going to qualify. That person doesn't have a financial history of bankruptcy, or they don't handle their finances poorly. The court wants to know that. Because why on earth would we appoint somebody who's filed for bankruptcy like 7 times, and their bank account's always in the hole? Because you're giving that person the authority over somebody else's piggy bank, right? So the court is very thorough with that, and that is the last resort. We don't want to have to do that, but there are just situations where you have to do it because you don't have any power of attorney. But again, in the situations you have a power of attorney, and even in the provision in there, it says, I nominate this person to serve as my guardian or my conservator. It says nominate, it doesn't say appoint. The reason for that is the court may find that person not to be in the best position. They may not be the best person to do the job. All you can do is nominate that person, but the court is ultimately going to determine whether that person is in fact the best person. Because what you may see as your loving child, you may not be so loving with the piggy bank, like the girl who took the property. Okay? Any questions?
Yes,
Yep.
I don't think I heard it correctly, maybe I did. Did you say that you can have more than one person as your power of
Your
attorney?
agent? Yep,
Yeah, your agent.
you can.
Uh,
Some banks don't like it, especially when you're doing a financial power of attorney, because sometimes my favorite is, let's say if you have 2 kids. How many kids do you have? And I bet they're not all in the same spot. Yeah. Because what happens is you're appointing somebody as the power of attorney, and look, my favorite part is, why did you not pick me? Why would you not appoint me? And I'm like, why would you want to do the job? It is a lot of extra work. But it's more so a pride thing. You get the oldest child who lives like in Washington or in Michigan or somewhere else. They can't help you with your daily care, right? My brother's like 2 miles from my mom. For her to appoint me as her power of attorney or her advance directive agent, that's just pride for me. And that's not fair to my mom. So my mom does whatever she wants. And I love my mom, and I'll do whatever she wants. Because I'm the one who has to write the documents for her. And yes, ma'am. I don't care. It's my mom. I mean, it's her stuff.
your spouse is number 1, and
It-
then number 2,
Yep.
but how do you?
So I would always, well, it just depends. I mean, I get situations where, again, if you 2 were previously married, if you're coming in and you're now married, you got kids from a previous marriage, he's got kids from a previous marriage, then I have situations where the spouse, then they may not appoint their spouse, they may appoint the child. So, but if it's just straightforward and you're married 50 years and you've got kids, I would always appoint your spouse, because your spouse is the one who's there every day, day in and day out. Okay? I mean, look, I love the man. Look, I'm a man, but here's the sad thing, and I hate to say it, I'm sorry. But we don't live as long as we live around here. And I can say it because I see it every day. And I'd love to say it otherwise, but it is what it is.
So if it's your spouse, it continues to be your spouse unless the spouse dies,
Or they're in company.
or they're in company,
Yep.
then it goes to
That's why I always put alternates.
all.
I want an alternate. Because again, let's talk 20 years, 15 years from now. If you have a stroke and your husband has dementia, well, now we're stuck. Then we got to go to the court to do the thing that we didn't want to do, which is go and get a guardianship conservatorship. I'm going to set it up in such a way because I want to make sure that you guys are protected, make sure your kids can be stepped in for you to help you in that situation. Right? I mean, we want to make this as easy as possible for everyone involved. We want to do it.
If you are either traveling us or moving
So like in your situation, obviously I would suggest appointing each other. And then for the alternate for you, then you have to decide who would that person be. Your sister-in-law, I mean, she's a surgeon, so you know how much time. So you've got to then decide who would be appointed. And we would walk through it.
My sister's a lawyer, and she's not like that.
Yeah, so that, I mean,
Closer.
yeah, but that's the thing, she's a lawyer, but again, it's a lot of time. And it's a lot of day in, day out, paying your bills, you know, communicating, doing all this stuff. You don't realize how much time it takes. It's just like being the executive. My favorite is always, why did she or he get to be the executive? Why not me?
Okay, can you do something like, rough estimate, a little bit, or we told the accounting firm. Accounting firm is still taking care of our taxes and that stuff. Can you obviously go there and say you want to make a handle to be the executive, that power of attorney? Because there's 3 people that we know.
Yeah, but, I mean, you could, but you'd appoint that person individually. And again, they could oversee your finances, yeah, but then you're talking like daily maintenance of your house, mowing the lawn, maintaining the lawn, even for, like, if you need sitters, you really need somebody more personal. It's one thing to appoint them as your executor of your estate. Like, I had a client, and I don't do it. I don't like being executor of the estate. I don't want to do it. But in this situation, I knew this guy's situation. And I find that, and I reluctantly agreed to be the executor of the estate. Still a thing. But even though I was the executor, he was leaving everything to not his sibling, but to like a cousin. In that situation, though, I backed away just in case I had to have to deal with any litigation and let the cousin become the executor. But even, we just have situations where you want to put somebody in place. If you could have somebody, have the accounting firm, and name a person as co-executors of the estate to make sure that it gets carried out.
Paul, like you said, I got a kid in Alaska and one in Denmark, so I'm screwed. What if you don't have any family that's close enough or willing to or capable of taking care of
That's where it's tough. That's where we have to sit down and talk. I would definitely put you on Alaska insurance. Because, you know, we're in such a technological age right now, so a lot of your bills can be paid online. Everything can get set up that way and make sure all that's handled. It's just like, but your hard part is your advanced director, so you have to go to the doctor, communication with the doctor, who communicates with the doctor. Yes, it's great because the kids want to communicate with the doctor and figure out what's going on, but how do you get to the doctor? So, like I said, that's the part where I spend a lot of time when I sit down with people because I need to know. I'm not here just to make money off it. I want to make sure that you've got it the way we want you to have it. And we want it to go to who it needs to go to. And that at the end of the day, we know you're good. Because that's important. I'm going to treat you like my mom and my dad. And it's just, that's the way I want it. Because at the end of the day, I know I don't want a child to attack. I don't want to have to go through this whole mess of children. And it is, and it's frustrating. And again, I got son of grandma that passed away, but nobody touches it. And I'm like, why? Why do we do this? And then when I explain it to them what we have to do, and they just walk up and don't come back. That means their kids are going to deal with it. And again, it's all the roots are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It just becomes more and more difficult. Okay? Good?
Question.
Yep.
Are advanced directives and financial power of attorneys, are they state specific or do they transfer across state lines? Or if the person who has put the directive in place moves from one state to another, does another one, a new one have to be created?
That's what he asked as well. So if you move, I would strongly suggest, because the laws may change in the state. You know, if you're thinking of moving, you could do one because look, if you're thinking of moving but you never move, or if something happens, boom.
What I'm thinking about is my mother, who's in
Yeah.
Florida, is thinking about moving to Georgia.
How long has she been thinking about doing that?
Last 6 months, but she recently had a stroke. She's
Yeah.
recovered, but that has accelerated her timeline.
Yeah. So if you're in that situation, you know she's coming, but she's had a stroke. If it's me, I'm really cautious. I'm more cautious than not. I would say get her one there for safety's sake, and just so she's covered.
Oh, she does. She's covered in Florida.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if she moves to Georgia does it have to be recreated?
I wouldn't see that it would, you know, because again, if you take it into the hospital or take it into your bank and say, bank, look at this and tell me if you have an issue with it. Because they're just gonna send it to their legal department. Ultimately, the bank is gonna be the one. Now, I have people that like to do their homemades. And I swear, please, well, don't do quick claim deeds that are homemade. Okay, I know this is, we're not dealing with real estate. For the love, please don't do those because those are the bane of my existence. I hate them and I have to fix them all the time. So, and it's like your financial power of attorney and your advance directive, right? Don't try to do them on your own because if they're wrong, and when you actually come when you need it, you try to save a buck, and let me tell you something, you didn't save a buck, you exponentially lost a lot of money. Okay?
Do you need to carry that, copies of it, if you're traveling?
What I would say is like your advance directive, take them to the hospital. I would always have them. You know, it's so weird that you're like, hey, do I need to carry? But I would always just shove one in the glove box just for safety's sake. Right? Because, like for me, I mean, go in your phone. How do you know if somebody gets into your phone? How do they know who to call? Right? Mine is the wife. You know, you need to go make a phone call. My wife, it just says the wife.
Tag that device.
What's that?
In case of emergency, ice. When you get your phone, it's something that says ice, and you know it's coming. That's been looked at for years.
I'm saying the wife, not ice.
No,
Ice,
no,
what are we talking
in
about?
case of emergency.
Yep.
She's in there by name, but she's also there in case of emergency.
Okay.
You go to the phone, and they can get into it, because I don't use station or.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
It's like, I thought we were talking about deportation.
No.
It's like, how do you know? Like, every week in my courtroom, somebody gets deported.
No, so what happens is paramedics in the hospitals know what that means.
Okay. Gotcha. Good to know. Now, see, all I thought was like, immigration.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. That's a good idea. But yeah. But again, to your advance directive, like your will. My last thing I'm going to say on this is your will. Okay? I had one that was such, I actually read it. And usually when I see homemade wills, I don't read them because I know they're not right. But this lady wrote it. I mean, it was a novel. It was beautiful. And I read it. And the people came in and were like, okay, is it good? I'm like, no, it's beautiful. I love it. And you can put it bind it up and put it on the coffee table for someone to read. That's worthless. If you don't do the will the right way, the state of Georgia has certain requirements. If you don't comply with that, your will's worthless. Right? So if you think you're going to do a homemade will and it's going to work, you better make sure it's right. If it's not, you wrote it, but it didn't mean anything. Right? Good? Yes.
Question, if you happen to be traveling overseas and passed away and we were traveling together, which would be my power of attorney, what monkey wrenches does that throw in the process, or is it this time and working through the process?
The question is, do you have any of that documentation with you? I mean, look, you and I, we can play variables all day long.
Right.
We're trying to cover you as much as we can. You know, yes, you're going to get those certain situations that you need to have as much with you as you can, right? And in that situation, I mean, if you're going, you certainly need to have that. I would try to maybe have it in your phone, have it photographed or whatever, or have it in email. Or you could even, like, if we did it, call my office and we can email it to whoever we need to email it to. I always keep it because, like, with your financial power of attorney, you do a homemade financial power of attorney, good luck using it, because the bank's not going to accept it. And that's why I keep a copy of it, because the banker may call me and say, hey, did you do this? I'm like, yep. You want me to send you a copy? Sure did. And it makes life so much easier.
The point of contact is going back to whoever drafted the firm that drafted it
Yep.
as one file or whatever.
I always keep one on file, just in case. Like I said, I try to control all the variables I can control. I can't control them all, I'd love to, but it's just, we try to cover everything we can. I mean, look, just like if you appoint your kids, make your kids the executor, make your kids the guardian. You're all on a trip together. Oh, we could just go down a rabbit hole. You know, but you know, if you just do what you have to, you certainly. But then at some point in time, if your entire family's wiped out, we're just going to go into the intestacy laws of the state of Georgia. It's not just going to automatically go to the state. Okay, we get all that all the time. The state's going to take it all. No, it's going to go to a cousin of a cousin of a cousin. I'm never that cousin. I get a lot of people like, man, I
instance, the spouse passes and there's no will,
Yep,
okay? And there is, first of all, there's a vehicle
yep.
that's not paid for. How does that work? As to what happens to it? Can
So
one of the
let
children?
me ask this, and you have kids, are there kids
It's
involved?
what now? I'm sorry.
Are there kids involved? Let's
Adult
just,
children.
how about, or we can just make it easy to say no kids.
Adult children.
So you can try to communicate with the car company. Most of the time, they're not gonna talk to you. It's like that there's a loan on the house, and you're not on the loan, they're not gonna talk to you.
I know.
I would say at that point in time, we would certainly, you keep paying the car payment until we get somebody appointed as the administrator.
Okay, so if I've been appointed administrator, then what do I do?
You then call the car company.
I
Because
thought-
you have
I can't
you have
be-
the authority to act on behalf of the
Okay.
estate at that point.
Okay,
We can even get you appointed as the temporary administrator, or temporary executive,
okay.
to help with anything in the immediate need. Yeah.
And so, do you have any idea what the car company does? I mean, can
If you don't pay it, they're gonna come and take it.
does it what?
If you don't pay it, they're gonna come and take it.
I don't want to do that, but.
Yeah, but I mean, you need to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Yep, I mean, you can talk to them
So
about
we
what.
could, if we wanted to, let someone else take over, like one of the children wants the car? would
Because here's
that
the
be-
problem, you gotta get the car insured, you gotta get it registered, but the lender has the title, they're the lien holder.
Right,
So you gotta communicate with the lender about how do we get this resolved.
okay. So I have to do that part.
Yep. But let's say if you're gonna give it to your adult son, or your adult daughter, whoever it is, and they want it, most likely the lender's gonna want them to just go to the bank and go get a loan on it and pay that lender
To
off,
pay it off.
okay?
One more on that
Yep.
same line. What determines, support? And something I read when the judge was, making the determination that the surviving spouse was entitled to
So,
support.
and it's funny, my brother and I were talking about this just the other day, and they have a situation like up in somewhere in Georgia where the wife, what she does is in the will, she doesn't leave the husband anything, right? Because the husband's a scoundrel. He is. And what's the husband do to negate that, of not getting anything? In the state of Georgia, you can file what is called a petition for a year's support. A child can file it, or a spouse can file it. And that's how they can come in, and what it says, court, I want you to give me enough money or property that allows me to maintain my same standard of living for a year. And it can be filed within 2 years of that person's death, right? And that's how they can circumvent that. And like this guy who's a scoundrel, yeah, he's doing it. And I know, and I told my brothers asked me a question. They said, what would you apply for? I said, I know what his attorney applied for. Everything. And this lady owned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. Hundreds of acres. Like probably 500 to 1,000 acres. And I can guarantee you, he got the right attorney. He said, well, my standard of living is all that land. Even though she had her own kids. That's how it goes. And then you gotta fight. Like I had to deal with that one time, but it just so happened that the lady in that situation filed that petition for a year's support. She kind of got $1 million insurance policy. So, and that's the thing, is like in the will, the policies don't go in the will because if you have a beneficiary designated, they don't go in the will. So what they do is they kind of like, they ignore that part. Well, I just got like $1 million or $2 million. I'm not going to tell you that, but I need everything though to keep me living that same standard. So, yeah, there are people that do try to circumvent it. All right? I just did everything. Well, but if you have, I have one just today that we made some changes. And look, you can always change your will. Like I said, remember the lady who did it about every 2 months? You can, it's just gonna cost you some money if you're gonna do it. But look, people pass away, or things happen. You have situations where you don't want it to go. If you have a son, a lot of people don't like their daughter-in-laws, it seems lately. there's so many variables that you and I can play out, we'll be here all day. Probably here all week. But, you know, what we just want to do is, and thank you all for coming, because it is important. Because if you don't think about this, if you want it done a certain way, if you don't, the law's going to dictate. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about an executor will.
Yep.
You're gonna go somewhere else?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, we do have a will,
Okay?
and right now we have 3 children,
Yep.
and they are all listed as executors.
Okay?
Because you know, when you're doing it to be fair, but if you appoint one over another one, after you're dead, you can explain why you chose that one.
But you're dead.
Huh?
You're dead, you don't have to explain
Right,
anything.
well, no, I know, but, you know, it's hardly.
But here's the thing now, okay, let's put the scenario out. Where are your kids again?
In different states.
Yeah. Okay, where at? Okay, so now what you've done to me is if we have to probate the estate, now I've got to deal with 3 different locations. Hold on, let me go. So now, and this is assuming that both of you have passed away, you're the last one, okay? So now I've got to deal with 3 different children in 3 different countries. And now we've got to sell the house, right? Now I got to deal with 3 different children in 3 different countries to sell the house. Because typically what I do in that situation, I try to not get it to where it goes to all 3 of them. And here's why. Because typically they just want to sell the house. But the second I take it out of that estate and put it into their name, if one of them has a tax lien or one of them has a judgment against it, it sticks. So now I got to pay it. And now I have to make sure it gets paid. Okay?
I we cover ours a little bit better because we did stipulate that these are the 3 executors, but in order to carry it out, they could choose one of them to do it, or they could get an outside person.
You caught that. You caught that. I like it. I like it. But you really appointed them, but you're hoping they will kind of work it out together. Right? But the problem is when I read that will, it's going to appoint all 3 of them. Yeah. It's okay. Look, it
They
is.
have to, okay, well, part B of that question, and I hope this applies to other people, not just me. You were talking about property.
Yep.
When you do everything you need to do as an executor, and you decide to sell the property, divide it up, do the banks, will they accept all 3 executors, or does one have to?
I have to have all 3. I
and
have to
will
have
they
all
do
3 of
that?
them. So what will happen if you pass away? I have to then file a petition to probate the will. So basically, we have to execute a petition. It simply says that, look, court, you passed away, and we are the petitioners. In the will, it says that we are to be appointed as the executors, all 3 of us. So we hereby submit this last will and testament, which we acknowledge and say to the court that we all agree that this is her last will and testament. And we ask you to appoint all 3 of us. And the court will, if there's no issue. But again, in that situation, you made it really hard on me. And it's okay. I understand that, look, you're not trying to play favorites. I get it. Look, I got 3 kids. I get it. But in that situation, I love my kids. But again, it's a job. It is not something, you know, but in your situation, if you have one child, again, you got to play favorites. You got to do this. What if that child doesn't do it right? Just say all 3. But it's difficult because, again, you've got them in all different countries.
Different states.
Different states, it doesn't matter, they're not together, okay? So, I gotta get them all appointed, and I'll have to send them all over to different courts, wherever they all are. So it's made my job exponentially 3 times harder, which is okay, I mean, we do it. But then when it comes time to sell the property, what'll happen is now I've gotta get deeds signed from people in 3 different locations. So it just makes it harder. We get it done. You know, it's okay. Look, I get it. Your mom. And you love all your, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great. You got 3 kids and you love them. It's okay. like in my situation, I'm the unlucky. It's not unlucky, but me being the lawyer, my mom's supposed to be the executor. But I will tell you, if she calls me and says, you know what, your brother's right up the road, do you mind? No. Because I know what it takes. And it's not, some of them are easy, but some of them can be difficult. Right? But if yours are easy, just, we'll get through it. You just keep it the way it is. Okay? All right? Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about having free children,
Yep.
and you also have to say,
Okay?
and, one, is leaving their assets to those three children. And the multiple properties involved.
Okay.
So, that's gonna be a headache, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's for them to decide. You're not there.
I know, I did. but-
So here's some place you can deal with it. I usually will stick in, like in certain situations, your best question is, you have daughters. How many daughters do you have? Okay, well, here you go. I have twins. So let's say for my twins, when my wife passes away, who does she give her jewelry to? Who gets the ring? Who gets all that stuff? Like the guns. The son always gets the guns. But in those situations, you kind of got to figure it out. Or you just simply say, look, I'll leave it all and get equal shares. You guys deal with it. Yeah, because in certain situations, like, even like when it comes down to an automobile, or sometimes I've had lawyers that love it when they just put vehicle. You don't understand, like a vehicle is like the tractor, the Polaris, like all the cars, it covers a lot. So you just have to be careful how you word it. And just make sure that, we go through it. I go through it and it takes me about an hour and a half to go through everything with the client. And just make sure, some of them are really super easy, but some of them, like when they detail, if you want, like I had one, like they wanted to leave the quilt to somebody, and like the quilt rack to another person, like the china, the snowman dolls, and I'm like, oh my God. In that situation, what I like to do is I put a personal property provision that simply says, I will leave a list, it'll be attached to my will. And you just, at some point later, you just fill it out. And I had one lady, I love it, she actually went around the house and stuck little stickers on everything as to who was getting what. It was cute. Yes, ma'am.
You said that there were three things that you wanted to alive, so the advance directive, financial power of attorney, and will. Okay. About how much would this cost?
$750 for all of it. Now, that's for simple. Now, if it changes, obviously, if we have to add a quarter of a trust in there, like if you have young kids or grandkids, and I love getting into it like with kids. It's so much fun, but it's so funny. Because I have some people so what I've learned is the frontal lobe, so the young decision makers of us, like for me, y'all will probably like did everything right when you were growing up, but I didn't. The frontal lobe doesn't fully form until you're 27, right? So you don't start making adult decisions till you're 27. Like for example, I have people that leave their kids or their grandkids money through an insurance policy, or they'll leave them money in the will. And I'm like, so when do you want them to have it? I'm like, I don't care. 18's fine. I'm like, do you remember 18-year-old you? And I always give them the example of my friend Rodney. Rodney got hit by a cement truck when he was like 16, maybe 15. So Rodney got a lot of money. Rodney got like 75 or 100 grand when he had 18. Rodney spent like 75 or 100 grand within like a month. Rodney was broke in like 2 months. So I always remember that to say that, look, just like with my kids, I have a pour over trust. My kids will get some when they're 24. They'll get some when they're 27, and they'll get more when they're 30. I put a lot of gray area in there. So whoever my trustee is, and it's my brother, and I trust him with my life, that if my kids need it for education, for health care, for living expenses, he can take care of it. Because I want it in there. I don't want my kids, I'm not saying I have a lot of money, but if I have money and my kids can't get to it and they need that money to survive, why would I not want them to have it? But I don't want them to go out and do like a Rodney Renault and go just blow it off. Because I'm telling you, it happens. Still does. Yeah, I have one just a few months ago where I had to, they're all like 50 or 60. And one of the children is just in a trust. They get a certain amount of money every month. But it's good, you know, because every one of your kids are different. My kids are all different. And maybe one kid is not good with money. And you just want to make sure that that money lasts for a long period of time because you know if they get it, they're going to blow it. And a lot of parents that worry about that for their kids. That's okay. It's a great way to go keep it so they get money. And they'll have that money for a long period of time. All right? Good? All right. I didn't bring any cards with me. I was late today. But I'm sure she has the information if you want to call my office and schedule an appointment. I don't charge for my meeting. Yes, ma'am?
Where would you go to find a wheel?
Me.
No, I'm talking about one that's already been read and everything.
What do you mean? Who's
Like-
we talking about?
My father died. I wanted to see his will. Where would it be? Oh, he laughed.
So it's funny you said that. I mean, I can't tell you where they hide. Like I had one, like remember the one I told you about the mom was changing the will all the time?
Mm-hmm.
The family went through the house like 5 times. Couldn't find it. And I said, you're not looking in the right place. They're like, we looked through the entire house 5 times. And I said, you're not looking at it like how your mom would look at it. You need to take the perspective of your mother and go look and think about, where would mom put it? They went to the house, called me 20 minutes later, and they found it. She stuck it up under a blender, an old blender box, stuck it up under this new one. You just have to think about, and I have another client, they're furious because they can't find their dad's will. Somewhere in the house, but dad ended up getting dementia. And again, he was making decisions that he would never make. So they have no idea where the will is. Which is, you know, it's sad because if you, my favorite one, this is my hardest one. If you get married, okay, if you get married to somebody that is not the parent of your kids, right? If you come to me and you do your will, we're going to take that will, we're going to put it on file for probate, okay? Because if you want to make it to where your kids are going to get something out of that, and you put it in your will, or if you leave a kid out, who's typically going to find that will? It's going to be the person that's not getting something, and that will suddenly goes missing. Oh, it loves to go missing. I have it a lot, and it's so annoying. But what I do to circumvent that, meaning get around it, is I go have them put it on file with probate.
Yeah, my son has a friend, whose mother died, and the father is refusing to show the daughter the will. She wants to know if she's included, but the father won't show it to her. And, I thought, Lucy, Minnesota, they would send out a notice to family members about the will.
So how
do you do this with your?
how I would do that,
How could you find that?
if he's claiming he's not going to probate the will, I'll file what I would do is file a petition for letters of administration. So what that means then, I get a third. If he's not going to show this will, but that's the question though, what if the will doesn't leave anything to him and leaves everything to the kids? See what I mean? It's bad. That's why I'm like in that situation, why on earth would you let it for that?
So she needs to do what, file
First of all, I would call every attorney around, and I would even figure out who did the deed on the house. I'd call that attorney too. I would exhaust all remedies, every avenue I can, because I'm telling you, because otherwise he's going to get a third, and the only thing that I think about if he gets the third is again, what if the will says he doesn't get anything? That's why I don't want to bring it forward.
So just kind of ask around, see if you can get the right person.
No, I'd call every attorney.
Yeah.
I would.
Doesn't work. It's such a big cost.
Well, that's the last resort, but I don't, when you think about it though, I don't know that I want to do it because again, maybe that's what he wants because he's not getting anything. Has anybody ever used it? Sure you have, yes. So the go QPublic in that county and look it up. You can find the deed book, the last deed book in Haines. Get some, go to the courthouse and pull it up.
I can do that and send that there.
Isn't it? Yep. So again, so my name is Chad, C-H-A-D. My last name is Van Orman, so think that my wife loves to do this. It's a van that you drive, and she does it every time. Van or man. So V-A-N-O-R-M-A-N. My law office number is 229-382-7490. And then our law firm is Riggin and Van Orman. It's up straight next to South Georgia I Park. 382-7490. Again, it's Chad, C-H-A-D. And just think, as my wife just loves to do it when she does it. So it's the van that you drive. And so van or man. Yeah.
He is our man. For the night, and forever and a day, amen. Hey, it's been a wonderful session.
Yes.
I didn't want to do PowerPoint because they're too short, and I'm trying to cover everything. Because it's just example. We're trying to keep you guys away from all the stuff that we don't want to get into. Right? Okay. You all have a wonderful evening.
Yes. I really do appreciate, all the stuff that he's saying, I'm listening to all the executive stuff, and I realize, this is real good stuff, just going through stuff, just the whole process of being the executive of my mom's estate. I'm the oldest of 5 children, having to go through getting my mom's bill probated, and literally have to stand there and be sworn in and all that, so it really is a true process. And my siblings and my dad, they all had to agree, although my mom named me as the executive of her estate, my dad had to agree to it, and even my other 4 siblings. So this is really, really fresh, like 4 months off. This literally just happened 4 months ago. So I'm just telling you, my mom used to attend all of these classes, so this is very, very fresh and very relevant. So I knew that we needed to bring this information in here. So I want to tell you, next month, we're going to bring in someone that's going to talk to us about insurance. I'm either going to bring that in, got to make sure that I confirm that person, because we want to make sure that we're purchasing the right types of insurance. Okay? Life insurance. We want to talk about life insurance, and so I want to get somebody in, and so it's either going to be the life insurance class is slated to be next month, and then in July, I'm supposed to have someone in that's coming to talk about investing, just a light topic about just investing. Okay, so we want to get these hot topics in so that we're moving and we're progressing. So tonight, of course, you know that Federal Home Loan Bank continues to be our supporter in terms of our refreshments. But my personal business, I just could not wait until next month. I just could not come in here without anything in my hand. So my personal business, Dr. T's